Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I'm Kendra Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have Ina. Ina has a bomb drop of December 16th, 2023, and a date of marriage of 1993. Her husband is still at home and he is a low-energy wallower. She says, "We married young. He had an affair early in our marriage within a couple of months with an older woman. Then another affair at our 7-year mark. We split up for several months at that point. I started dating, and he wanted to work on things. After that, we had a great marriage for the next 21 years. Then he started to isolate in his room a lot. That lasted until I left. So I'm looking at 21 years, 28. So 7 years, good. Early in the marriage could be 7, right? And then 20. So we have 28 years. After 28 years, 28 to 29 years, he started to isolate in his room a lot. Okay, so that does put us to around 2022, 2023. That lasted until I left. So you, Ina, left. We've had fights with the divorce word thrown around, but neither of us left, I'm assuming, before that. This time, when he said, I don't want to be with you, I left. He then blames me for leaving. Yeah. He now says he's happier. He's out gambling and going to strip clubs, not paying the bills. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm at the point of no contact. We have all adult children that he barely talks to. He's definitely not the same guy. I will say he hasn't had a physical affair, but I'm pretty sure he's in an emotional affair with my former best friend. He says he wants a divorce, but he hasn't even attempted to get one. I called him out on boundaries and all hell broke loose. First thing, yeah, all hell is going to break loose on boundaries. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but you have to know what you're doing so that when all hell breaks loose, you have already prepared, not expected. Expectation is you expect anything, everything, and nothing. But you're prepared for if one of those everythings is all hell breaking loose. Okay, what do I do in this scenario? Okay, hold on a sec. Let me go back to what I was thinking about. So, Ophew, you said that you left, and so he blamed you. That is one of the reasons I don't recommend that the person who doesn't want out should not be getting out. The person who wants out gets out. The person who drops the bomb, the person who is having the affair, gets out. So you left, and it's not that it's a right or wrong thing. I'm just saying, yeah, that is one of the reasons. Why is then they do a blame twist on you. Well, you abandoned our marriage. Not just left, but there's that big word, abandoned. And now he is happier out gambling, strip clubs. He does not have anyone to control him or reason. He doesn't have a reason, structure. He doesn't have the structure. I think that's really the idea I'm looking for. We can say boundaries, we can have reason, we can have control, but he doesn't have the structure around him to keep him in check. And now, you said you married young. He gets to go out and try all those things that he has wanted to do. In fact, he probably tried them because he had an affair early, and then at the 7-year mark, he had another one, at which time you split up. And he's in an emotional affair and possibly physical with your friend. It is not uncommon that they do nothing. They say, I want a divorce, and they do nothing. Sometimes it's because, well, what does it matter? We're not really together anyway. That's just paper. I don't need to bother with that. Maybe it is better to stay married on paper. Or they'll be shocked when you do it. And they'll shocked sometimes because they hadn't want it, sometimes hadn't want it because they want the option. Well, if this doesn't work out, at least I have my security. I have the insurance of my real marriage. Sometimes it's just because they're lazy. Sometimes maybe it is because, yeah, I don't want to be married emotionally, but there are benefits such as tax benefits, or we don't have to worry about splitting up the assets, that sort of thing. Those sort of benefits that I don't have to deal with that. We can handle having two households. No big deal. For some, that's viable. But it is very common that they will do nothing. He's not going to do anything. Why should he do the work? If you do the work for the divorce, you have to think about things. Maybe you have to ruminate and go over the things that you're trying to avoid and escape and avoid. So, called him out on boundaries. What does that mean? You called him out or you set them? You said, you're not being appropriate, blah, blah, blah. Here's what needs to happen. And what are the boundaries? In the beginning, and according to your bomb drop date, you're in the beginning. In the beginning, the stronger the boundaries, the more resistance you will get. Resistance is not a bad or good thing. There are some reasons for setting more, I don't know if the word is more flexible boundaries, but you start slowly with boundaries. You start more gently. Setting the big, scary boundaries comes later. Some of it is because of practice on your part. Why set this really strong boundary? Because you're not capable of holding them to it. In other words, you're not capable of keeping your boundary without breaking, and you're not capable of putting out the consequences yet. So that might be a reason that we don't set certain boundaries until we've gained more strength, more detachment. Same thing with them, though. We set this boundary now, and they're resistant. We set it later, first thing because maybe we can back it with strength, but they've progressed more. Maybe sometimes they recognize the fairness. Sorry, you know what? I live here, you don't. You haven't lived here for 2 years. You don't just get to walk in and out of this house as you please. But 1 week after bomb drop instead of 2 years, it's my house too. I can come and go whenever I want. I do like house boundaries earlier, but that is how it can be. Your certain boundaries. Now, calls him out on boundaries, all hell breaks loose. What else does that mean? Is it because you're calling him out on something that hadn't been a problem? So the example I've been using lately is you're on a phone call with him and you say, you know what? And or maybe you're not on a phone call, but you're anticipating. And so you're setting a boundary, and whether you're setting this by talking on the phone with him or whatever. And I will hang up on you if you are inappropriate with me on the phone. But you said that when he wasn't at that moment being inappropriate, and really, he's not really ever been inappropriate. There's not a pattern or history of it. So kind of like the woman scorned thing, which is a real thing, which is why they're afraid of it. But how we're hurt and like, what? I would never slash your tires. And so they're setting a boundary saying, and if you slash my tires, and then we get offended. So why would I ever do that? So they're going to get offended. All hell breaks loose could be offended. If we talk about a boundary and putting a boundary on something that has never been on their mind, their radar, that they weren't going to do that. They hadn't been doing it. So there's some things where you set boundaries like that, maybe. So if they walk out of the house, you have to determine whether you want this or not. It's not always this way. Maybe one of your boundaries right then is if you leave the house, because there's an if, that is the behavior, but it might not be as negative as you want it to, as it feels to you. If you leave the house, you don't have access anymore. And access might mean you can't come and go. It doesn't mean that you can't knock and I can't invite you. That would be set by the boundary and what that means. But it might be if you keep coming over when I'm not in my house and you keep coming in, or you keep coming and taking things, or you just keep walking in without knocking, you're not allowed to have a key. I will change the locks. Those are house access things. So notice one of them was based on them doing nothing other than walking out. I'm sorry to minimize that, but there are so many other things that happen. Versus they're abusing that they own a house or just have access to a house and they have the keys and that they are still the official resident because they haven't changed it on their postal address. They don't live there. They don't get house access, but maybe they do. I did not remove Chuck's house access in the beginning and for a long time because I wanted him to have the comfort of home and continue to come to our home and while I wasn't there. That was when he came. He came and he would hang out with Tammo, our German Shepherd. Tama was his baby, and I felt safe that he was coming home to be with her. I wanted the connection. I wanted to encourage it without him knowing I was encouraging it. And so I did not want to say, you can't come to my house. Now, later on, 3 years later, I changed the locks. Boy, was he shocked. And that was because of you're being an inappropriate spouse. If you're going to be with her, then it was a no contact boundary. It wasn't even you've been abusing the house and coming in while I'm gone. It was we are not to have contact. And I am putting a very strong no contact boundary on there. So I didn't want him to have any contact with me or things associated with me like the house. I changed the locks. It was a great look on his face, how shocked he was. But I had to have a reason for that. And I had a history for it, moving up to it. So sometimes they'll get mad at the boundary because the boundary isn't making sense because they've never done that. That's never been a problem. And so they're offended. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes it's because you're an obstacle. You're highlighting how I'm a monster. The boundary. And I can do whatever I want. Sometimes it's them trying to arrest control back again. And they just want to be conflicting and argumentative. What do you do with that? They're showing their emotional dysregulation. You work on your emotional regulation. I'm sorry you feel that way. Here's how it's going to be. This is for my protection. This is not personal to you. I tried to lower my voice, tried to be calm, and I tried to sound and be regulated with my emotions, my tempo, the mood with which I'm speaking, the temperament I'm trying to exude to him is all meant not only to help calm him down, because it might not, but is also meant to help me maintain my own calm. So sometimes the way you're speaking to him in these situations is really meant to bring you down or keep you down, because you really want to go off when he's in monster. You want to rise up with monster and be monster yourself. And that's not going to be functional for you. It's not fun. And you plural, the two of you. It is not functional to have two people who are emotionally dysregulated in a high conflict argument. You're not going to get anywhere but blaming each other. You are describing midlife crisis. He is at the right age for midlife crisis. I know you're doubting it. And I can never tell you for sure, but yes, you're describing it. And he has a pattern of running, even though you might have said you split up for several months and you started dating, maybe, but he has a pattern of affairs. And just because there were 21 years between this, he has a pattern. That is a way of running. Emotional running. He has a pattern of that. He did it in the beginning. I didn't get to sow my wild oats, whatever excuse he used. He did it 7 years in. And yeah, you've had 21 years now of maturity. But something has stressed him, some sort of a trigger, and he has gone back to former coping mechanisms that are negative, that don't work. And then he started to isolate himself a lot. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to feel. He felt bad for how he was feeling. And that set him up and made him more susceptible. And he has crashed into his midlife crisis. Sorry, it sucks, I know. Let me know if you have any more questions. And I hope this much was helpful to you. I will see everybody in the next question.